It began as an ordinary day that turned into a national nightmare. A moment meant to inspire suddenly became one that stunned the nation. On September 10, 2025, at Utah Valley University, conservative commentator Charlie Kirk was addressing a lively crowd of students and supporters when tragedy struck without warning. Thousands had gathered under the clear midday sky to hear his speech about freedom, faith, and America's future. But within seconds, everything changed. A single gunshot tore through the air, cutting short the applause and sending shockwaves across the courtyard. Panic followed. Screams erupted as people ducked for cover. Others froze in disbelief, and the event meant to spark dialogue descended into chaos. From that moment, the question wasn't only who fired the shot, it was how could this happen? Subscribe now to stay informed as we uncover the truth behind what really happened that afternoon. Charlie Kirk's public event at Utah Valley University had been widely promoted as part of his American Comeback Tour. More than 3,000 attendees packed into the open-air campus venue that day, filling the area with excitement and energy. For many, it was an opportunity to hear one of America's most recognizable conservative voices speak in person. But what began as an afternoon of debate and inspiration ended in terror. Witnesses recall the sound, a single, sharp crack that silenced the crowd. Kirk collapsed on stage, and within seconds, his security team rushed to him as students screamed and ran in every direction. The shooter was nowhere to be seen. In the chaos that followed, security personnel and law enforcement struggled to regain control. Radios crackled with conflicting information. Some guards shouted directions, while others froze, uncertain of where the danger was coming from. Every second that passed without clarity deepened the confusion. For attendees, those moments stretched endlessly, a blur of fear and disbelief. Within hours, the university was locked down, and the FBI took charge of the scene. Investigators worked through the night, combing through the area for clues. It didn't take long before a suspect emerged. Authorities announced that they had identified 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, an electrical apprentice from nearby Provo, as the prime suspect. He was arrested 2 days later. To the public, it seemed like a swift and decisive breakthrough. The FBI's press conference made headlines nationwide: shooter captured. Justice for Charlie Kirk. Officials presented what appeared to be a solid case: a rifle recovered from a rooftop, partial DNA matches, and surveillance footage of a man resembling Robinson entering the building hours before the shooting. But beneath the surface, cracks in the narrative began to form. At first glance, the evidence seemed conclusive. A bolt-action German Mauser rifle chambered for a .30-06 round had been found hidden behind an air vent near the alleged firing spot, just 142 yards from the stage. A towel stained with blood and a screwdriver carrying partial DNA were discovered beside it. Investigators claimed the DNA pointed to Robinson, and the bullet recovered from Kirk's neck matched the rifle perfectly. It looked like an open-and-shut case. But as the investigation deepened, inconsistencies began to surface. Robinson's background didn't fit the profile of a political assassin. He had no criminal record, no history of violent behavior, and no documented extremist affiliations. His digital history revealed nothing that hinted at radicalization or hostility toward Charlie Kirk. Even more puzzling, phone records and GPS data placed him miles away from the university around the time the shot was fired. His employer confirmed he had been seen purchasing electrical supplies that morning. Robinson denied any involvement, claiming he had never entered the building where the rifle was found. To his defenders, it appeared that something wasn't adding up. As the case unfolded, new footage began circulating online, footage that changed everything. The videos, originally seized from Turning Point USA's production cameras, provided a clearer view of what happened immediately after the gunfire. One camera, positioned just above the stage, captured moments of confusion among security officers and staff. In the chaos, a technician was seen quickly removing an SD card from the main camera minutes after the shooting. The action, though possibly routine, sparked fierce debate online. Some argued that the technician was simply securing critical evidence before it could be lost or stolen, while others suspected the removal was an attempt to conceal footage that might contradict the official account. Theories spread rapidly, fueled by slowed-down clips and commentary on social media. Though the FBI later confirmed that the footage was unaltered and that no data had been deleted, the damage was done. Public confidence in the investigation began to erode. To many observers, the speed and precision of the technicians' movement felt suspicious. The idea that Robinson might have been framed started gaining traction, driven by online analysts and independent journalists who dissected every frame of the footage. They pointed to what looked like miscommunication and hesitation within the security team, moments that raised questions about whether the real failure had occurred much closer to the stage. If those tasked with protecting Kirk had faltered, was Robinson simply being used as a scapegoat to divert blame from institutional mistakes? What unfolded in the aftermath of the Utah Valley University tragedy wasn't just a story about a single gunshot. It became a story about failure, confusion, and the unraveling of trust. What began as a sudden act of violence soon exposed something deeper, a chain of human mistakes that turned an already horrific event into a national reckoning. In the weeks following Charlie Kirk's fatal shooting, investigators combed through every second of footage, every radio log, and every piece of physical evidence. But as the facts slowly emerged, they revealed something few had anticipated. The breakdown wasn't just in security, it was in communication, coordination, and credibility. Further scrutiny uncovered troubling details that painted a chaotic picture of those crucial minutes after the gunfire. Communication logs between campus police and private security teams showed severe lapses. Calls were missed. Commands were duplicated or sent to the wrong channels. Lockdown protocols, which should have been activated within seconds, were delayed for several agonizing minutes. Entire sections of the campus remained unsecured during that time, leaving terrified students and staff exposed to potential danger. According to multiple reports, confusion reigned in the immediate aftermath. Some officers believed the shooter was still inside the venue, while others thought the gunfire came from a rooftop. Messages relayed over the radio contradicted one another. Possible second shooter was mentioned at least twice within the first 3 minutes. By the time the situation was under control, more than 10 minutes had passed, an eternity in an active shooter scenario. Witnesses later testified that it felt like no one was in charge. Some saw officers sprinting toward the stage, while others shouted at the crowd to stay down. A few tried to help the wounded, only to be pulled back by security unsure of whether the threat was still active. Every second of hesitation carried weight. Those moments didn't just define the event, they defined the perception of failure that would haunt the case for months to come. Federal investigators were quick to assert that there was no evidence of conspiracy or deliberate misconduct. The official explanation was straightforward. It wasn't corruption, it was chaos. Human failure, one FBI spokesperson said, is not criminal. But that phrase did little to calm a public already distrustful of institutions. To many, human failure sounded less like accountability and more like an excuse. Public reaction grew tense. On social media, people demanded to know why such a high-profile figure could be left so vulnerable. How could trained professionals miscommunicate so badly during a live event with thousands of people present? And why did it take so long to lock down the area after the first shot was fired? As public outrage intensified, online forums filled with theories, some based on fact, others on speculation. And then came another twist, one that blurred the lines between digital evidence and digital deception. A message appeared on a Discord server only hours before Tyler Robinson's arrest. It seemed to be a confession, written from an account under his name. The post, now infamous, read like the words of a remorseful killer, short, emotional, and eerily specific about the details of the shooting. Within minutes, screenshots spread across social media. News outlets picked it up almost instantly. Headlines declared that Robinson had admitted guilt in an online post. For many, it felt like the case was closed. But the digital world is rarely that simple. Within days, cybersecurity experts began raising red flags. The syntax of the message didn't match Robinson's known writing style from his text messages, emails, or social media posts. The grammar was off, the phrasing unnatural. Even more concerning, The timestamp embedded in the post's metadata didn't align with verified server data. In plain terms, the post's timing didn't make sense. It appeared either edited or backdated, suggesting that someone may have tampered with it after it was originally created. Digital forensics specialists took a closer look. They found signs that the message could have been edited using third-party software or even generated by artificial intelligence trained on Robinson's prior posts. His defense team seized on this possibility, arguing that the message was not only suspicious, but potentially fabricated. In today's world, Robinson's lawyer stated in a press briefing, digital evidence can be created, manipulated, and distributed faster than it can be verified. And that's exactly what we're dealing with here. The FBI, meanwhile, maintained a cautious silence. Officials refused to confirm or deny the authenticity of the Discord post, citing ongoing forensic analysis. Their restraint only fueled public suspicion. Online communities began spinning new narratives, some claiming Robinson was framed, others insisting he was guilty, and the FBI was hiding something larger. The investigation had entered a new phase, one where perception often mattered more than proof. As the story deepened, journalists, researchers, and independent investigators began uncovering inconsistencies across multiple forms of evidence. Forensic teams stood by their findings on the rifle, bullet trajectory, and DNA traces, but questions persisted about how that evidence had been handled. The chain of custody, which tracks evidence from collection to courtroom, was called into question. Small discrepancies in timestamps, mislabeled storage logs, and undocumented handovers added more shadows to an already complicated case. Witness accounts didn't help clarify things either. Some attendees swore they saw more than one flash near the stage, implying multiple shooters. Others claimed they only heard a single shot. Independent journalists later discovered that some camera feeds from the event were not perfectly synchronized, meaning small timing differences might have created the illusion of multiple flashes. None of this conclusively proved wrongdoing, but in a case already steeped in controversy, these gaps in precision only magnified doubt. In the age of viral media, uncertainty spreads like wildfire. What began as an investigation into a single act of violence had now become a battle for narrative control. Traditional news outlets emphasized caution, but online influencers, independent bloggers, and social media commentators amplified every unverified claim. The case transformed from a crime scene into a digital battleground, a fight between those who believed in the official story and those convinced that powerful forces were covering something up. By the time early court hearings began, the case had ballooned into something much larger than anyone expected. It wasn't just about Tyler Robinson anymore. It was about truth itself and how fragile it can be in the modern world. Every piece of evidence, every leaked clip, every conflicting witness statement fed into a larger question. Who controls the story when everyone has the power to tell it? Commentators noted how the case reflected a deeper cultural divide. On one side were those who trusted institutions like the FBI, the courts, and law enforcement to find the truth. On the other were those who had lost faith in authority entirely, relying instead on online communities and independent investigators. The more both sides argued, the further the truth seemed to slip away. Even official statements struggled to hold weight. Each time investigators addressed one rumor, another surfaced. Each clarification seemed to open two new questions. Experts described it as a crisis of credibility, not just for this case, but for society as a whole. Once trust in evidence erodes, they said, even facts lose their meaning. Through it all, one reality remained constant. The tragedy at Utah Valley University was not just a random act of violence. It became a mirror reflecting the vulnerabilities of modern life, the fragility of our systems, the flaws in our institutions, and the power of digital media to shape public opinion. It showed how a single event could ripple across the nation, raising questions about safety, technology, and truth itself. For the families involved, including those mourning Charlie Kirk, the endless swirl of speculation added to their pain. They wanted answers, real ones. But every headline, every rumor, and every new, breaking update only made the wait for clarity more unbearable. The search for truth was no longer just a legal matter. It had become a national obsession. Investigators continued to dig. More experts were brought in to verify digital evidence. Every SD card, every camera angle, every line of code from the Discord server was analyzed. The goal was simple: to separate fact from fiction once and for all. But as one federal official admitted privately to reporters, in cases like this, the hardest part isn't finding the truth, it's getting people to believe it. The deeper the investigation went, the clearer it became that modern justice faces a new kind of challenge. In an era where anyone can edit footage, fabricate posts, or manipulate data, traditional investigative methods struggle to keep pace. Digital forensics, once seen as the ultimate tool for truth, now exists in a world where misinformation can look just as convincing as evidence. This is where the story transcends the courtroom. Because beyond guilt or innocence, beyond Tyler Robinson or the FBI, the Utah Valley University case exposed something every society must confront: the fragility of truth in a digital age. When every person becomes both a witness and a publisher, the line between reporting and rumor disappears. The internet amplifies everything: facts, lies, and everything in between. And when that happens, public trust, arguably the foundation of any justice system, starts to crumble. Months after the shooting, America still debates what really happened that day. Was it a lone gunman, a systemic failure, or something more complex? The answers may take years to uncover. But what's certain is this: every new revelation seems to raise more questions than it answers. Forensic reports have confirmed the rifle's origin and its match to the bullet recovered from the scene. Yet, for many observers, the case feels unresolved. Every procedural mistake, every missing timestamp, every unexplained message continues to cast shadows on the investigation's credibility. The result is a fractured narrative, one where both sides cling to their version of reality. And so, the story persists, not just as a criminal case, but as a test of our collective discernment. Can we, as a society, still recognize truth when surrounded by noise? Can we distinguish between verified evidence and viral speculation? In the end, this case may be remembered less for the crime itself and more for what it revealed about us: our dependence on technology, our craving for instant answers, and our willingness to believe what aligns with our emotions. Truth, once a shared foundation, now feels like shifting sand beneath our feet. As investigators continue their work, the questions remain hauntingly familiar. Who do we trust when every source is questioned? What happens when the institutions meant to protect us lose the confidence of the people they serve? And how do we rebuild that trust once it's gone? The tragedy at Utah Valley University will forever stand as a reminder that justice demands more than just evidence. It requires transparency, patience, and humility. It requires us to listen, to question, and to resist the urge to accept the first narrative that feels right. Because sometimes the truth takes longer to emerge than we want it to. And when it does, we may discover that the real lesson isn't about a single gunman or a single mistake, but about how fragile truth has become in a world that moves faster than facts. The search for truth continues. The investigations persist. And while the story may still evolve, one thing remains certain: clarity will only come when every detail, every frame, and every word is measured against honesty itself. Because justice at its core depends on one thing: trust. Stay tuned, stay questioning, and subscribe to stay informed as this story continues to unfold.